Welcome to Sports Night in Quarantine. I'm Delaney Barrow, and today I'm joined by Harrison Tarr, who is a sports writer at the Auburn Plainsman. Harrison, how has quarantine been treating you?
Quarantine's been one of the more strange experiences that I think probably the most strange experience that I've endeavored, gone on in my life. It's been really weird, especially from our perspective and our career field. Being a sports journalist, you would think everything comes to a screeching halt. But at the same time, it's been really interesting because we've had a lot of features come out, especially over on our end. I've actually taken a promotion, now the lead sports reporter over at the Auburn Plainsman. So there have been some ongoings, but it's been weird. Work meetings have been everyone kind of staring at each other through this weird little Zoom call. The ridiculous outfits, if you're going to Zoom meetings, ridiculous outfits, keep doing what you're doing. You're keeping us invested, engaged. But it's been weird because not having breaking collegiate news is really difficult because having contact with SIDs right now, I'm sure you're familiar, is impossible. A lot of them are furloughed. I got a couple pieces that I was really excited to release with the University of Cincinnati dropped when this whole thing started. I was on a contract. They told me, can't pay you right now because there's no work. So it's been really weird, but I think we made do. It's been okay.
That's good, and congratulations on the promotion. That's incredible.
Thank you. I'm excited. We have a really good staff this year. Bringing back most of everyone. Really going to miss everyone. Rip in peace, Nathan King. Just kidding. He's moving on to bigger and better things. But we have some big shoes to fill, and I think we definitely have the right people in the right places to do so. And we have a great platform at Auburn Student Media. You know that, not just for the Auburn Plainsman, but I speak on behalf of Weagle, Eagle Eye TV, War Eagle Productions. Really great platform that even, I guess right now is a weird time, but if you're going to get in contact with somebody, our inboxes are very open. So definitely a great expansion period for us.
It definitely is an expansion period, especially because there's just so much unfamiliar territory, and we're all trying to keep up with our craft, even though there's, like you said, not many major collegiate headlines being released right now. But have you been writing a lot during this time?
I've actually stepped out of my comfort zone during this time frame. I've had one or two space filler articles, published a piece when we added UNA to our basketball schedule. But past that, I've actually stepped out of my comfort zone and went out and helped our community team with covering protests for the Black Lives Matter movement. Very important. Obviously, COVID-19, very big deal right now, but it's kind of taken a back burner, which we still need to practice social distancing. But at the same time, I think it's really cool to see how everyone from different areas of the journalism field as a whole have kind of come together to say, let's all work on this, not just because we don't have anything better to do right now, but because it is the most important thing that's come out of 2020, COVID-19 aside. Is, obviously don't want anybody to suffer or be ill, but at the same time, this is coming about at a way too late a time. And I'm really glad that I'm at least here, and I'm in such a great community that has been so heavily supportive of this movement. So it's been really cool to be able to work with some of our guys, Jack West, Tim Nail. I can't shout them out enough for including me and giving me the opportunity to use my platform to help try to make a difference. So that's what I've been up to the past 5 or 6 weeks.
Yeah, you mentioned a really good point about stepping out of your comfort zone and not necessarily only covering sports. And that's super important, especially for times like these when there's a lack of sporting events and sporting headlines. And I stepped out of my comfort zone in the spring with Eagle Eye's election show. And I'm glad I did that. So now I have a little bit of experience there. And I did start out as just a regular reporter, not specifically on sports. So it's good to have those skills just in case another occasion like this arises, but hopefully it won't.
Absolutely. It's great. And it's also really cool, not just to have on your portfolio, but also to have that in your repertoire to say, here's some things, here's how I handled things the first time. Because I don't want to say history repeats itself. That's counterintuitive. But another scenario similar to this will arise, and especially like you said with your election show, and we have an election coming up in November. It's good to be able to look back and say, you know what, there's a couple of things I would have done differently, because there's a couple of things I've stayed pretty neutral on Twitter in terms of voicing what I feel like should be voicing my opinion, but also not infringing upon the opinions of others. But looking back, there's a couple of things that I should go back and word things differently, and going back and checking your tweets for AP style hurts every time. It really cuts deep, but it's really good experience, and I'm glad that we have that platform that we have right now and the opportunity. So
It really is a great platform. And besides writing these articles on different topics that aren't sports related, are there any other ways that you've been keeping up with your craft during this time?
I've been doing a lot of research in terms of getting ready. I guess watching film, if you count it as research. I've watched all of University of North Carolina's 2019 campaign for football, all of Alcorn State's. Alcorn State's was kind of painful to watch through, but I did it. Um, and I just enjoyed the heck out of being able to watch. I think I watched the UNC App State game 3 times. I don't know. That game was just. I'm a big advocate for. I love seeing mid majors and the Power Six, or I guess group of 5 teams succeed. So I watched a lot of UNC film. Uh, Basketball, I try to watch back. I have a hard time staying engaged and rewatching basketball games. Football, there's a ton of patterns that I wouldn't recognize, and a lot of things that happen if I wouldn't rewatch it otherwise. Basketball is too fast paced for me to try to be able to actually recognize patterns. But I've been trying to at least put together some stuff and jot down some ideas about what all is going on in terms of what to look for. And I'm confidently going to go and say when we play in Mercedes-Benz Stadium this fall. So I've been trying to prepare for football season and done some freelance work I can't give away too much right now, but I have a colleague that's going to be entering the MLB draft this year. So I have a full get to know you feature on him, and I have 4 or 5 different locations that I know have been speaking to him already kind of pre-written. And now I'm just counting down the days to, fingers crossed, hopefully it's probably going to be late round 5, but hopefully we sneak into the draft this year.
That's awesome. And that's great that you are still keeping up with everything. And like you said, this is a great time for research. I know with ESPN's Michael Jordan documentary that was released, that
Oh,
was great to just learn
I
more about that.
watched it twice. It's so good. It's so good.
So good. And also a great time to catch up on 30 for 30s and, like you said, watch old games. Just like how
Yes,
we did our bracket, reliving the best Auburn sports moments. That's always great.
that's a good one. When ESPN was running the Auburn days, those were cool.
Mhm.
Those were a lot of fun. We always
Yes.
had those on around here. So
Yes, and speaking of Auburn, so 3 players, football players, have tested positive for COVID-19 on the first day back after everybody got their initial test. Do
yeah.
you think that this could have a major implication on whether or not we play college football in the fall?
Well, for lack of a better term, the SEC's already said we're going to do the dang thing. We're going to play football at some capacity. I think that 3 players being asymptomatic, you don't want anyone to be sick. You don't want anyone else to be contaminated or contagious, which obviously COVID-19 is highly contagious. I don't think it's really going to have any implications to at least Auburn football. They're being quarantined, and for that, for what it's worth, we're still several months out from kickoff. I don't foresee it becoming a widespread issue, especially since they're being held under strict quarantine. But if things spike up again in the fall, things could get weird. I think that there's a real world where we play football in empty stadiums, and you know, for schools like Alabama that have empty stadiums anyway. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding. Uh, Not having fans is going to be weird. But to a degree, these kids cannot waste a year of eligibility, and the NCAA has been. I choose to refrain comments toward the NCAA, but their procedures about how they've handled situations in the past in terms of awarding red shirts has been less than promising. So it's going to be up in the air, especially if we have spring sports and not fall sports. I think that even if there's not a national championship, not a bowl season, I think you will see it won't be just the SEC. I think we will play football, even if it's just coaches, players, and media.
Mhm. And on that side, we would be the lucky ones because as media, we would most likely get to be there. But obviously, it wouldn't be the same experience because the
Right.
fans truly do help and they're that extra man on the field. They boost the home team, they tear down the opponent.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I just think that would be crazy. I know a lot of people would be happy with that because it's better than no live
Nothing.
sports,
Right. Yeah.
but it would
And
be
at the,
different for sure.
at the same time, I think a lot of people lose focus and lose sight of the fact that I love my job. I know you love your job, and we love what we do. It is an entertainment market. Without fans, I don't get paid. You don't get paid. Without viewership, and I understand, television viewership will go up. Readership will increase. But at the same time, it's an entertainment market, and if you're not playing in front of a group of people you're entertaining, it's almost defeating the point. I have a hard time seeing. I think that we could see half full stadiums. I think that the procedures will probably disappoint a lot of people. I think the boosters will definitely get priority at any school. That's not just at Auburn University or in the SEC for that matter. Boosters will get priority everywhere, and I think there will be some cases where underclassmen get the short end of the stick, just students, which is unfortunate because I know a lot of out of school states, get upward of $60,000 a year. But I don't know. I wish I had a crystal ball. I really did. Or maybe I don't, because I may not want to know what the answer is.
Yeah, and you mentioned the boosters, and that is so important. I mean, obviously the rest of the fans wouldn't be very happy if they're given priority, but at the same time, without them, future seasons would be so much more challenging to pay for everything and to provide those upgrades that make game day experiences so memorable. Mm-hmm. So they most likely would have to be given priority, but I do think that, like you said, those out-of-state students, that would be so disappointing to not get to go to any sporting events, and they should be given a lot of consideration as well, but it'd just be really hard to divide out the stadium in a proper way.
And it's hard because, especially not specifically here at Auburn, I use Auburn as an example. People preach about, oh, my school has the best family atmosphere. I love bringing my kids to games. I mean, it's entertainment for all families, people of all ages. So it's really hard, especially, taking your kid to their first football game, really memorable for a lot of people. Their first softball game, the first basketball game. I'm focusing too much on football right now. You know what I mean? And it's difficult because it breaks those traditions that a lot of universities, and Auburn prides themselves on tradition, have been withstanding since well before you and I were even thoughts in our parents' mind. So it's we're living through a chapter in a history book, and we're just kind of along for the roller coaster. It's out of our control. We're gonna have to roll with the punches. So
we are, yeah, it really is out of our control. All we can do is hope and try to do our part at keeping everything as sane as possible and not making things worse. And when you mentioned, going back a little bit, about the players being asymptomatic and being quarantined separately, if there was a large enough group of players that were all asymptomatic, would you support them still being able to practice in that group, or do you think that they should just rest for those full 2 weeks and make sure that they're fully recovered before resuming any type of conditioning?
I think it has to be a 2-week quarantine, regardless. I would love to have players back everywhere. I know everyone's getting ready. Just like we're trying to get back to our craft, they're trying to get back to their craft. But at the same time, you physically cannot. You don't have enough space for separate practice facilities. You can't say one group gets to be in the weight room while the other room gets to be on the field, so on and so forth, without cleaning to a level that's just not practical on a routine basis. And I know we're all trying to practice social distancing and practice being sanitary, but there does come a degree where things are just not practical. So you have to keep everything in kind of in scale, and make sure you keep a level head when you look at all of this and say, yeah, it would help if all 11 guys can play at the same time. They're on each team, can play on the same time together in practice. But you would have to put safety first. This is a public health problem, and it's not worth infecting everyone on scholarship and everyone who's not on scholarship, plus the coaching staff, if it means that a couple of guys get 15 or 20 extra reps. It's not worth it.
Right. They're already putting safety a little bit behind by going ahead with anything. I mean, they're trying to take all the possible precautions in order to keep players as healthy as possible, but there's already somewhat of a risk. And like you said, there's just not enough space, and that could put the whole team in danger. And if the whole team were to come down with it, there's no telling. I mean, that team could just be, whether it's Auburn, Alabama, because some of their players tested positive, any SEC school, any college football team, if the whole team or even the majority comes down with it and it's closer to the season, they could just be out and their season done for.
And we're only hearing from the SEC right now. Big 12 doesn't report till next week. And it's going to it's not going to be just the handful of teams we've already heard. There are going to be players everywhere. They're going to be asymptomatic.
Mhm.
It is a pandemic, and as much as it's it stinks, and we don't want this to happen, it is the world we're living in, and we can't sit here and complain. And I probably will sit here and complain, but there's only so much you can do about it. I mean, it is what it is. We got to keep moving forward and trust our government officials and our coaching staff and the staff at individual universities that we're going to do what's best in the best interest of everyone. The NCAA has kind of left it to the conferences and the individual schools. I think that's
Mhm.
probably the way it should be. Given that it's hard to put a blanket statement when schools like Auburn and Alabama and as the rest of the SEC for that matter may not have as many cases as say Rutgers up in New Jersey or
Mhm.
Syracuse in New York. UCLA out in Los Angeles. Yes, they're going to have a higher concentration. Everyone should be on their own time frame. Now, it's going to be interesting to see how that is handled, and I'm sure that we will have players will miss games with COVID-19 this year. So,
Right. I mean, it's almost inevitable that during the season, especially if classes are back on campus, which most people believe that athletes will only play if students are back on campus. And I know that some colleges have talked about starting the semester a little early, and then when students go home for fall or Thanksgiving break, then that's the end of their semester. Do you think that by doing that, obviously it wouldn't help fall sports as much because they'd be going on simultaneously, but do you think that that would potentially help winter and spring sports have a higher chance of following through their whole season?
that's a great question for Dr. Fauci and not one for me. Uh, I'm going to be honest with you. I can sit here and speculate. I do believe we will have a second wave of
Mhm.
COVID-19. I'm not a medical expert, but from all the numbers I've read, so many that at this point I've just unfollowed pages on Twitter because I'm tired of seeing the same numbers over and over again. But it there will be a second wave. I believe. If not, then that's great and that's fantastic, and we can continue going on with what will be the new norm. Um, but I don't know that there's a way that one benefits more than one group of sports more than the other. I don't, especially with your winter sports
Mhm.
that last from November to March. Like, what do you gain? You have to start asking yourself that how beneficial is it?
Mhm.
So it's really 6 one, half dozen the other, in my opinion.
It's going to be a challenge for sure, especially with the fact that spring sports this past year get an extra year of eligibility. Winter sports unfortunately did not, and if anything happens where the season gets canceled again, most students, if they were a senior coming back for their extra year, they can't afford to come back again. They
Yep.
need to get a head start on either their profession or the pro leagues. And you're right, it could cause a lot of complications. And it'll be interesting to see because I know several schools have announced that early start, but not a majority. So it'll be interesting as we get later into June, seeing what each school decides individually.
Yeah, it'll be curious. I will know by July. We'll know by mid-July. I I wish I could speculate, but it's not even something I can begin to give you a good estimate on.
July is a good date for that. And I think, I mean, by the end of the July, we're supposed to have the NBA. Hopefully, I would say baseball, but there's been some complications with that and some disagreements between the Players Association and league officials. So I know that you are very invested in baseball. So what's your take on all those issues?
There's a real world where we don't play baseball again until 2022, which is terrifying. And I know anyone viewing back home, well, there's no way COVID-19 keeps us away. You're right, there's not. But we're going back to what we were talking about earlier, is an entertainment market. Uh, right now, the MLB just keeps trying to force feed players salary cuts. Um, only league really forcing players to do so. Bad look, very bad look. I get that they're losing most of their season, but they've yet to come to an agreement on coming back this year, and then next year with new salary caps and whatnot, there's going to be a strike with the MLB Players Association, and it's going to be probably just as lengthy as we've had so far with this COVID-19 madness. Maybe not quite as far, but I really don't think we will see another full season in the MLB until 2022. and that's alarming for the sake of the sport and for the sake of the popularity, which will in turn we'll have more seniors playing college baseball.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something, but at the same time, it's a concerning thought to think that one of the big four is going to come to a could very well come to a screeching halt for an extended period of time. And not to mention, we've already acknowledged, we talked about before we went on the air about how there's only 5 rounds in the MLB draft now. Insane. There are way too many players that get taken every year that are going to be left to go back to their school for another fourth, their senior year, or be forced to transfer to a JUCO because they graduated early so they could go play in the pros. It's going to be a mess. And only having five rounds, 150 players drafted, that's alarming. So it's something to keep your eye on. I think we'll have more answers as we get closer to August, because the MLB really doesn't seem to be in too much of a rush. They've been lagging behind the others. The NHL and the NBA jumped right on it. They wanted to, as soon as they closed down, they wanted to figure out how to open back up, and it'll be interesting to say the least. I genuinely do not think that we will have anything remotely resembling an actual season this year. So
that is alarming. And I think part of the issue, I mean, if you're looking at the NBA and the NHL, they had already gone through a lot of their season. The rankings for tournaments were already coming out. So when they were making their plan to come back, they didn't really have to think about, obviously they wanted everybody to come back to finish the full season, but realistically playoffs are the priority. So I don't think that was as challenging for them, and that was probably part of the reason why they were rushing so much to restart and resume the season. But with baseball, I mean, they were still in the middle of spring training. They still have every team in contention for the World Series, and I think you said that, like you said, there is a good chance that there is not going to be any baseball this year. And if there's not, hopefully that'll give them more time to figure it out, and then we would have it in 2021. Because like you said, I don't know, big four sport just completely stopping for like 2 years without a full season. That's just completely insane to me.
If they're going to jump ship on the 2020 season or anything that resembles a 2020 season, priority number one, as soon as that happens, is to contact have meetings with the MLBPA and see to it that players are in spring training in March, at the end of February. Pitchers and catchers better report on the day they're supposed to report. If not, there are going to be severe financial consequences to the MLB. And it's already, a lot of people consider it, it is the least profitable of the in terms of viewership, average viewership. Now, obviously, it plays the most games, so it balances out. But it's already kind of what a lot of people consider a dying sport in terms of the pace of play, in which they try to toy with every year and still, not seem to come to any conclusion with that. But they need to make sure that they're going to play in spring if they are going to have this problem this year. And I don't think it all actually falls all on the Players Association. I think you have to hold Rob Manfred accountable as well. It's got to be on both sides, and that's with playing ball next year. That's with solving the COVID-19 issue this year, and that's with the lack of response from the baseball community with the Black Lives Matter movement right now. So, a lot of question marks in the MLB, which hurts my heart a little bit.
Yeah, there are so many question marks, so many things to think about and contemplate. But I mean, just thinking about there being no baseball for multiple years is, I think that, I mean, to me, baseball is a summer staple, and going to the games,
absolutely,
great experience. And I mean, like you said, if there is none, there will be more seniors playing college baseball, which could make that more competitive and maybe build up the interest for when MLB resumes. But there's just so much in the air, and it's a very scary thought that it may not happen.
And then does the NCAA have to allow baseball to take more scholarships?
It's a good question.
It is a snowball effect.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I don't know. I wouldn't say it keeps me up at night. I sleep pretty well at night, but it does something that runs through my mind a lot. it is it's confusing and concerning. So
It's very concerning. And with that huge question about will baseball return for several years, that's going to wrap up all that we have to talk about today. So thank you, Harrison, so much for joining me.
thank you
This
for
has
having
been
me.
another episode of Sports Night in Quarantine. I'm Delaney Barrow. Be sure to tune in at the end of the week for another episode. Thanks for watching.